I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
It is now time. Number 3 in the agenda is public comment. This is the time right now we ask for public comment, anything that needs to be said, anyone wants to approach the board, this is your time. Anyone from the board have anything they need to say? Public comment is taken care of. Number 4 is approval of the September 11, 2014 Policy Board meeting minutes. Would anyone like to move to approve?
I move.
Do have a move to approve by Phil Neighbors. Do I have a second?
Second.
I'll take John's second on that. Do we have further discussion on that? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. Meetings have been approved. Number 5, executive session under revision of Government Code Title 5, Section 551074, Open Governments. Ethics, Subtitle A, Open Government, Chapter 551, Open Meetings, Subchapter D, Exceptions to Requirement that meetings be open. Do we want to have our executive meeting session now, or do we want to go ahead and finish the meeting and then do it?
If most of us are able to stay, if we can defer that until later in the agenda, because I'd like to see if Patrick will be
Okay.
here.
He should be here.
Okay.
Okay, let's defer 5 until the end of the meeting, and then we'll take care of that. Number 6, any action related to matters discussed during the executive, we'll also postpone that. Number 7, review and discussion of the draft 2040 San Angelo Metropolitan Transportation Plan. Any action in connection thereto? All right?
Okay, thank you, sir. I want to take a few minutes to go through the long-range plan, kind of tell y'all what we've done for this. It's not going to be that exciting of a presentation, but essentially what we've done, instead of calling this the Metropolitan Transportation Plan or calling it long-range plan, we've entitled it to call it Voyage 2040. What we've done is our plan is the 25-year period, so we're essentially looking from 2015 to 2040. So that's where we get 2040 at. And basically what I'll do is just go through and kind of summarize each chapter. Of course, the introduction, what we did is we essentially what we did right here was we just talked about the different transportation bills from the beginning of transportation planning. We put the long-range goals in there that we had discussed a few meetings ago. The document development, basically that talks about the steps that we took involving the public comment, kind of the different things that we looked at to put the document together. The Transportation Needs Assessment Survey, that was the survey that was conducted by ASU, in which they looked at all the different modes of transportation and put that out for the public. We took those results and used those to draft the plan. Our chapter summaries, of course, just kind of give you a little bit about each chapter. Our studies review, we looked at a couple of different studies to use in developing the plan. We didn't use them all, but this one just kind of gives you a description of the different plans that we looked at. We looked at some city plans, we looked at some transit plans, and so it basically just talks about the different ones that we looked at and some of the information that we used to put into Voyage. And then our identification of the planning issues. Based on what we saw with the Transportation Needs Assessment Survey, we took some of those issues and just kind of detailed it a little, and that's where we're going to focus at. That's kind of what this part of the plan is about, is coming up with solutions to fix those planning issues. Chapter 1 basically talks about the MPO, gives you the history, the purpose, talks a little bit about how we're funded, the components, basically how we're made up right now. Geography, talks about our planning boundary. If y'all recall, I think it was last fall summary. We're still waiting on TxDOT in Austin to approve that, but it just kind of it talks about the new geography and expansion that we have. Plan and program descriptions, that's basically summaries of the different plans that the NPO is responsible for, so your NTP, your TIP, and then your UPWP, and then our transportation planning process. So it just kind of gives you a graphic illustration of what we do, and how we go about doing transportation planning. Chapter 2 basically is all about the demographics and the makeup of San Angelo or in the NPO area. So gives you the definitions of the different areas. NPOs have their area, but there are also other areas that are considered. So the MAB, the UZA, urbanized area, the UAB, it basically just gives you a description of those areas. We looked at the different demographic makeup, so we looked at the population, race, labor, income, and I think we also put education in there. So those are just kind of some things that we looked at as far as compiling that chapter, and then we looked at the energy sector impacts, because we know that that's definitely going to have an impact on the demographics. Chapter 3. We've got our intro, the funding categories. Chapter 3. Chapter 3 is basically all about funding. So it gives you the funding category descriptions. NPOs deal with two different types of funding. So we've got highway funding, and then we've got transit or public transportation funding. So we give descriptions of those different funding categories. Of course, San Angelo NPO is not eligible for all those funding categories, but we just try to include some of the most common ones. We did a funding forecast based on estimates that were given to us by TxDOT as well as Concho Valley Transit District. So you will see a graphic in there with the funding forecast out to, I think we did 2040 on that one. It might have gone to 2050. Projects in our current MTP, we do have a project listing. We've got funded projects, unfunded projects. Some of those we moved over to the new MTP. Some of those we left off. I know we'll be working with TxDOT to kind of go back and review those again. And then at the last meeting, we kind of talked about the project selection process. That part's been included in the document as well. And so basically just talks about how we select projects and the criteria and the scoring system that we have.
Pause for a second. That's going to be really important because, like we talked about last time, this board really hasn't had a lot of money to direct, and the 2 years that I've been here, it looks like there's a possibility that's about to change. And so those two things right there, we're going to talk about a little bit later on the agenda, but important stuff, unfunded project selection process for that to get, that's going to become a real thing for us now. It hasn't been in recent history.
Is this draft out here where we can grab it and look at it?
Yes, we're gonna make some modifications to
Send it to everyone.
There's the document, and then there's also some forms with the document.
Dumb question.
And in particular, I'd like Sam should bring to me a snapshot of the funding forecast, because, we had a discussion about that. Our forecast right now officially is basically zero if we're looking at Cat 2.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think we.
That's not to change, but we don't have a good total number on there.
Yeah, we just.
And then I provided some language about highway, which included, so Cat 1, Cat 11, which is discretionary amongst our 15 counties. And, not a steady stream that the NPO can rely on. Anyway, I just wanted to see how that translated itself.
Chapter 4 basically is the public participation. So we've got the intro in there, it kind of talks about the history of public participation. We do have a public participation plan that's separate of the NCP, but what we did is we just took a summary of that plan and included it in the NCP. We talked about the public workshops that were held, in which we solicited comments from the public about the development of the document. The Transportation Needs Assessment Survey, we put the actual results in this chapter. So there'll be, the survey was, the results were extremely long, but what we did was we just kind of took some of the most important things that we thought should be included in the document, so we put those in this chapter. And then our Title VI and our environmental justice considerations, we have those included. And amendments, this part talks about how we go about making amendments to the document. So with this being the plan, occasionally you're going to have changes and you're going to have to amend the document. And so basically just tells the public, these are the steps that we go through to actually make amendments to the document. And then our financial constraint is a little information about how the long-range plan is constrained by finances. Chapter 5, got our intro. This is the roadway chapter, and certainly appreciate John's input on this. This is talking all about roadways and highways, so we talked a little bit about the functional classification. We included some language in there about the different types of roadways. We've got roadway distinctions. Thoroughfare summary is in there. There was a roadway repair schedule. I think that's information that I would say the city recall. Okay, so we've got basically, I think most of those, was that 2016? Okay, so we've got that schedule in there. A little bit of information about our travel demand model. We're still waiting on Texas Austin to supply us with that information, as well as to provide us with new software for travel demand model and forecasting. So once we have that information, we will update the plan to include that. The Unified Transportation Plan, that is a TxDOT document that we include some language in there. And then of course the Ports to Plains corridor, that's really important for this area. And basically we use the short and long range highway goals in the current NTP because those are still consistent with what we're doing, so we included those in this chapter. Chapter 6 basically is bike and pedestrian, so we took some of the components from the bicycle and pedestrian plan, so we've got the summary in there. We took the goals, there were 3 or 4 goals in that document that we used for this chapter. The objectives, we looked at the obstacles. This is where we included some of the current and future projects. So our river rail trail is going to be included in this one. The bike pedestrian improvement project, the sidewalk project in North Chadburn. Those are all included here. The bicycle and pedestrian accidents, I think we got data. We looked at data from 2008 to 2012 or 13, and so that's been included in here, and then of course we just included the summary. We're working right now to get the data for 13 and 14 for the bike ped data, so once we get that, we will update the plan. Chapter 7, Contra Valley Transit District, appreciate them for giving us this information. This is all about public transportation, so we've got the history, kind of operation, the services that the transit district offers, goals and objectives for them, their future initiatives, so we know that they're purchasing some buses, so we talked a little bit about that. Their expansion projects and some of the studies that they're proposing to do in the future. We've got a little bit of information about the terminal two inner-city bus operators that we have coming in. We have one, the other one's about to start, and then we talked a little bit about regional bridges. Chapter 8, similar to the current NTP, we just included more statistics looking at the employment and deployment, but covers the aviation, the rail, freight movement, and summary. Also for the rail, we were able to collect some statistics about the freight that they carry. So that's in that chapter. And finally, the conclusion, we included the actual survey, and then there were two executive summaries with the survey. ASU did one for San Angelo in general, and then they did a separate one for Goodfellow, and so we included those both because Goodfellow is a really large component of San Angelo. And then our public participation plan, like I said, it is a separate document. We're modifying that document because we're going to merge. Right now, we've got our limited English proficiency plan, kind of our Title VI plan is a separate document. So what we're going to do is merge both of those documents. And it will still be called the public participation plan, but it'll have a separate Title VI component. And we'll bring that either in November or December before the board for approval. And I think we're also, it's not on here, but I think we're also going to include, like I was telling you about those worksheets for those forms for the project selection process. I think we're going to include those in the appendices as well, because it would be important for people to understand what the project is, the purpose of the project, and actual location of the project.
Or I'd like to suggest you send that out, understanding this is draft, so we have a chance to look at it before we ask for approval.
Yes, this is just a draft today.
No, PPP and.
Oh, the PPP, okay. We can do that.
Yeah, we talked about that before. I'd like to make sure it's trending for simplification rather than complexity.
Okay. Yeah, we're working with, the thing that brought about this change was, down in the Public Transportation Division of TxDOT. There were some, things that came up on the public transportation side that we needed to, modify documents to be compliant with, and so that's what we're.
Okay, yeah, I didn't exactly know what was going to change. Yeah.
In its compliance. But that is essentially the plan. Hopefully y'all have had a chance to review it. It is online. It will stay online. We started the public comment period, 7 of this month. We have to go for a 30-day public comment period before the document can be approved. Still soliciting comments on this. So please get a chance to review it. Let us know what you think. If there are some sections or something that you believe needs to be changed, let us know. We can certainly bring that back. We can approve it. I mean, the document needs to be approved before the end of November. So between now and the next meeting, if there are any comments or suggestions that you have, please let us know. If you don't make it before we approve the document, we can always go back and modify it later, but it's better to just go ahead and do this now before we submit it to the state. Any questions?
Question about the project selection process. It mentions in that process of technical advisory committee that we talked about here, we really don't have one, but the process shows running a technical advisory committee. So it seems like we either need to have a technical advisory committee or the process needs to be modified to fit that out.
We're working on that, actually. Don Austin and Patrick and I, we were still putting all that together, because in order to create a technical advisory committee, we would have to make amendments to the bylaws. But we're still working on that. Hopefully we can bring that, at least bring some options for you in November. Right now, the technical component will have to be vetted in this board. And that's, we can modify the bracket to take that part out, but because there's been such strong support for creating ones, and we were modifying the document, and we just kind of included that part in there, but we can modify it.
looks like the timeframe on this Proposition 1 money, if it happens, we're gonna have a pretty short fuse, at least on the first year's allocation. And if we don't have a technical advisory committee, then we'll be doing something on that selection process that you really did have in the whole process. So
I think the conversation we had yesterday when we talked about this was that we could, Delray could potentially do the research to come up with maybe a better way to do things. And that Patrick and I, as a subcommittee, could look at it and see whether or not, it was something that we felt was in accordance with what the board would want, but then Delray would have to kind of shop it to each member, because it's too comprehensive to probably deliberate in these meetings and kind of figure out if there's any opposition to it, and find out, how each board member feels about it. And while that's not something we do tonight, I do think we could do that. To the weeds.
we don't feel like that'd be legitimate, the way the process is delineated now in this document.
I mean, I think if there's some consensus that that's what direction we go, and I just guess the answer is yes.
I guess one more kind of nuts and bolts question, the funded projects, I don't know, John, have you looked at the list that we've got?
There's only two from TxDOT in there, there's some city references.
The city out on 57 out the Tractor Trail, Howard College area.
Yeah, and that's-
Shows about $15 million of total project or more. Do we have that much? Just that-
Yes, including an action we just took. The money, the planning money that we had set up for that, which was Prop 14, we moved over to that construction CSJ and will be available for construction dollars later. And we were lagging on development of that. I think, and I don't have everything in front of me, I lose track, I think it adds up to about 15.
Okay. We should let that out.
I'll verify that, but I think that's what the change is again on that. So.
All right, this was just discussion. Is there any other further discussion on this before we move on to the next agenda item? I will add one thing, and this may or may not have anything to do, but I went to a meeting last month that was called by the Lubbock mayor. And the Lubbock mayor was there, I was there, the Big Spring mayor, Mesa mayor, and there is another push to extend I-27. Which I think is wonderful. I think it's been 15 years since they approached the state on it, and there was not a lot of traction. But with all the oil field traffic now, they feel that that it's time to do it again. It was a very good meeting, and we are going to further continue this. They were talking last time about taking I-27 through Sweetwater, and they thought about taking it through Midland. I had to stand up and say the only real way to do this is due south, right through the Mesa, Big Spring, San Angelo, and Sonora, Del Rio. That way we can tie in 10 in Sonora, we can tie in 20 in Big Spring, and it's so. Anyway,
That was,
this is.
I'm sorry, didn't mean to interrupt, but to tie into that, at the Forest Plains Conference last week, Victoria and I were at.
Did y'all talk
That was
about
the
it?
topic, as well as all those mayors were there and kind of spoke on their own behalf about it. But my understanding is that our transportation planning and programming division will be organizing a study that they'll certainly be involved with, to be sponsored by TxDOT. So here we go again, this, just starting where we were 15 years ago. So it's gotten that level of interest.
Well, maybe the time is right.
Yeah.
Maybe our grandchildren will see it someday.
So the initial steps of feasibility study, which is what I think John's talking about, and at the point when that's done, then finding money will be a big challenge. And that would be an expensive project. So if you're speaking right, probably our grandchildren will see it more likely than we will, but it'd be a great thing for this area.
And it'd be a lot easier to run it down 87, the property's there, it's already, then we'll go buy new property. So anyway, I just throw that out. I hope to be on that board because I think that's something that's very, very important for our area. So, any further discussion? If not, we'll move on to number 8. Let's move on to number 8. Discussion of the Concho Valley Transit District Public Transportation Operational Responsibilities as it relates to urban fixed-route bus stops and any action in connection thereto. Whose is it? Yours, Doug?
Probably mine, and this is just something I wanted to put before the board. The way urban transit works in the city of San Angelo is that we partner with the city, and they pay our local match. We have an interlocal agreement with them to provide urban transit, and there are six, Major jump in here, but. yes,
I'm sorry.
Six fixed routes.
Yes, sir.
And, but we run into an issue that's gonna require some collaboration, and that has to deal with bus stops. Because the way that bus stop maintenance or bus stop repair or any new bus stops is decided is not something that we can do unilaterally, because we don't have the right of way, we don't have the city right of way, or we don't have, in some cases, we don't have Texas right of way. And so this seemed like a good organization to try and vet out a better, at least process, so that if someone comes forward and wants a bus stop repaired or needs a new bus stop in a new part of town, there's some sort of formal way that involves public participation, that we do that, so we're crossing our T's and dotting our I's. Reggie, do you have anything to add to that?
Yes, I do. I've been approached by several organizations lately that want to come forward and repair a lot of these bus stops. And a Boy Scouts organization has contacted me, the Lions Club has contacted me, there's been several. The only thing is I don't have the latitude to tell them, oh yeah, come on, let's get this all taken care of. At the same turn, I look at it and say, the bus stops don't belong to me. The right-of-way doesn't belong to me. I really don't have many options here. And I can't try to fit something into the budget to take care of them because they don't belong to me in the first place. But there's a lot of movement with the ASU route that just got through the Student Senate the other night and is going to Dr. May's desk for funding. It's going to create more of a situation where we're going to need some bus shelters and some bus stops out there. We also have some of these private organizations here in town. Home Depot came before you all. They still want to put up a bus stop. We met with John, and we're putting that together so that hopefully they can do that if it goes well. Then they would like to do that in other places in town. And other organizations are hearing about it, and they're starting to step up and say, well, hey, maybe we would like to have a piece of that pie as well. So the need is there. The desire is there. The public participation seems to be there. And now is the time that we need to get some clarification on this and some true definition of who's going to be able to do what and who's going to do what.
I think from my perspective, I just felt like we sort of needed a third-party broker in this situation because there were so many interested parties to try and come up with this process so it's not unfair to any of the parties. And I don't know if it's something that NPO staff could work on. I don't know if that falls under the purview or the scope of work.
We can work with you guys and work with the city. We can sit down and have some discussions about this. I think one of the things that we've talked about, like Major saying, you've got all these different entities that are stepping up that want to do the bus shelters. From our perspective, the most important part is making sure that there's a process for placing these things, because you don't want to put all the shelters in one part of town while neglecting another part of town. So really coming up with the process as well as how we're going to put these throughout the community. But yeah, that's something we definitely can sit down and start looking at.
Is that something everybody would be okay if they do?
I would assume that most of these bus stops are on city right of way.
Most of
Think
them
I'm
are.
right?
Yes, most of them are.
That won't be a problem you can work out.
I'll be glad to work with you.
Would you wanna, okay, we can set up meetings, work with you, okay.
I think it's a good idea.
I mean, we'll have to also have some funding discussions, because there will be the issue of there are gonna be contracts in place as well, but there will be the issue of maintenance and upkeep, so.
I think once Home Depot gets theirs up and the businesses see them, I don't think funding will be that much of a problem.
I agree with you.
Because
And-
I think the businesses will be glad to, if they can get a party, I think they'll be glad to fund it themselves. It's good advertising.
And there are some capital improvement grants available out there that we can go and apply for as well.
Good idea, John. You want to work on that, Del Rey?
We can do that.
You
I have
and
a
Paul ought to be
question.
able to make that work.
We said that we don't, who owns them then? So you saying you don't,
We don't know.
okay.
In the interlocal, there were 5 extra stops for physical shelters that were not accounted for. They are, I believe, in the city's possession, but neither entity seems to know who owns them. They bought them the first time, I would assume.
The city originally bought them from the history that I can glean. The city originally bought them, but when the city transferred over all of the city bus service to Concho Valley Council of Governments, the bus stops were not addressed in that transfer of property.
Was that what should have happened, and can that be just cleared up now with the city designating them to change it?
Well, yes, except for that we still have the issue of we don't own the right of way. And we're 100% grant funded, well, except for the local match, we're grant funded, and so we don't necessarily have money to maintain them. And so, there just has to be some sort of collaborative process.
Yeah, I guess I'm thinking that, I mean, once that gets worked out in terms of the existing, I believe that there'll be a lot of interest in folks wanting to participate, like you said, when Home Depot, wants placed out there. I guess my thing would be, from an urban planning standpoint, is that you'd want to have some sort of design that people would feel comfortable with, or it could be something, it could be, because people use, as you know, bus shelters like artwork. It can certainly make a statement. And so I think that, the chamber or others could be involved in this process to be established, some sort of program where which you adopt a spot and you create an organization pays for a bus shelter. As you know, you do advertising on the bus, but you could also do it on the shelter as well, as you see other places. So, I think that it would be something even bigger than maybe what might be thinking just in terms of just the placement of those. You have an entire program by which organizations can create, adopt, maintain these shelters, and then do advertising as well. So, I think I'd be interested in having that kind of robust discussion as well about the bus shelters.
If we could get a policy in place, some guidelines, full guidelines, is that something that maybe we'd be able to administer?
Well, I think that's what we kind of have to discover through the deliberations, but yeah, I think that's what's so frustrating is that there is all that potential, and yet
Right.
we've got bus stops that are up, places where there is no route, and we don't know how to fix it.
That's something good to work on. Everybody in agreement on that? Consent? And let's move on to number 9, discussion of candidate projects and anticipation of potential funding opportunities, any action in connection thereto. Is that yours, Del Rey?
Text up.
That's what we've been talking about, and it's really related to the Proposition 1 that's going to be on the November ballot.
And we hope passes.
That we hope passes, and just, I guess, a quick summary, that proposition will transfer funds, not transfer funds, but it will divert funds from that are currently generated by the severance tax, oil and gas severance tax, and go into what's called the rainy day fund, economic stabilization fund. And if Prop 1 is passed, and it's a little bit complicated, but if revenue comes in and makes that fund grow above a ceiling that would be established there, then a portion of that would go towards transportation. That's kind of the simple short version. If some of that money, and the formula at which that will be distributed has not been determined yet, and it will be determined either by the Transportation Commission or by the Legislative Budget Board or some legislative committee. We're not sure what the formula is going to look like. But there's discussion that a part of that money may come to the MPOs. So that's what makes us need to start planning for the potential that if a portion of that money comes to MPOs, and especially the first year's allocation, because this will be available shortly after the passage of the vote, and a portion of that money, and that money, it's a big pot of money. It's estimated to be $1.7 billion right now to be distributed out around the state. Some portion of it, if it came to San Angelo MPO, we would need to spend that in fiscal year 15, which would end August, at the end of August of 15. So it'll be a real short fuse. So we've got to start thinking about, and it's a difficult process because we don't know how much, we don't know what the rules are going to be attached to it. So we've got to start thinking in advance of, if we had some money, what is the project that is most needed in the San Angelo area, transportation-wise, that we could get done quickly for the first year. But it's also a continuous stream that will come in 2016 and 17 and 18, we think. So we need to start thinking long-term about what that additional money would go to. So that's the reason we put this on the agenda, just to have a real informal discussion about projects that we think are high priority in San Angelo that are unfunded right now, that we could apply that money to.
Only to unfunded, or can we use it to partially fund it?
You could use it to even accelerate a currently funded project, but I'm pretty sure. And again, I don't know what the rules are gonna be, but if it comes through the MPO funding category, which is our category 2 formula, it may have the same rules that category 2 has. And if it just is extra category 2 transportation MPO money, then you could use it to pull forward projects that are already funded. So, a lot of mystery, a lot of unknown right now. This is just a preliminary discussion to start talking about that.
When will we know the rules?
It's a good question. Part of the mystery also.
It'll be after
There's a-
November 2nd,
yeah,
we
no
know.
rules.
We can't make rules because we don't know what's gonna pass.
Yeah.
There is a committee that's been appointed by the Transportation Commission, and it's an independent, kind of select committee that have had discussions about what the needs are in the state and what the percentages of money to go to those different needs would be. And as you know, a lot of people feel like their programs are unfunded, and so there are a lot of needs, whether it be just maintenance, which is unfunded. Energy sector is a big topic that's under discussion. I think a portion of that may be designated to energy sector affected areas. NPOs will have a big voice and want to get a portion of that money, so there's just a lot of variables to be focused on.
Maybe Darby will have something to say about that.
Are they? Does.
Construction only or planning projects as well? I mean,
On the first year, if it's in fiscal year 15, it'll be construction money. And then going forward, I think potentially you could use a portion of it towards planning also. So, the process that we just saw, the selection process and the, the public involvement that we've had, the survey, the public survey that we had for transportation needs, all of that plays into this topic. So we got some money potentially to spend, so let's decide how to do that best for the needs of the public.
I hope the voters will give us the opportunity to delve into that.
Looks pretty positive that I think it's gonna pass, but we just.
The opposition doesn't seem widespread or well organized, and locally in the Standard Time today, there's a
Good article.
viewpoint.
Well, Drew made a good plea the other day
He
at the
did.
luncheon,
He did,
and he explained why.
right, but I guess to further I think during the ARA process, they used the term shovel-ready, but now what you're talking about is a selection process. And so, we've talked about a lot of things that are on a list unfunded and some that are funded, but what would you propose to us as a means of either having you at different price tag levels to look at, and then if and when that money becomes available, there's a process and a list to start with so we don't waste any time?
Like shovel ready, and this first fiscal year is almost gonna have to be something, we don't have plans on the shelf right now that we just pull off and say, okay, this is in the MPO area, we think it's gonna meet the criteria. But there are things we can put together quickly. The topic that keeps coming up is Old Crystal Road. I think probably most of you guys have talked to me about wanting to do something out there. It showed up on the survey, the public survey, feeling like that's something that needs to be addressed. That is not shovel ready, and that's going to be a long and complicated planning and development process. That's something that this board could choose to direct some money at, but we could not do anything by August. And we may not even be able to do anything by next August, because there'd be right-of-way involved, maybe additional right-of-way, there would be utilities to be relocated. I think that's one that needs to be talked about and discussed, because I think that is a valid need that's unfunded right now, that we need to talk about for some future year's allocation. And it's not too far out, I don't want to push it too far out. If we decide that that's a priority, we need to aggressively start working on it and get it as quick as we could. For the short term, for FY15, you know, there's some pavement rehabilitation and pavement maintenance projects coming up that we could probably get ready by that time. The Houston Hart Highway, we're really right out in front of here. If you drive on that and you see the condition of that pavement, it's deteriorating really quickly. We don't have a project funded to do that right now. That's something we could get plans together pretty quick. We could go in and remove that existing pavement surface, do any repairs to that base structure, and then put a new surface on top of that. Very valid need. It would probably fit the criteria for this project, and we could accelerate it pretty quickly.
I do want to say, as an MPO, I think it's really important. I'm not saying those projects aren't good projects, but as an MPO, I think it's important that we also look at other modes of transportation, which we have not done a very good job of representing. If you want to use the survey does talk about roads that need repair, but it also talks a lot about bike lanes and a lot about sidewalks. So if we're going to look at rehabbing a road, we also need to look at putting some different types of infrastructure in with those roads.
That we can afford.
Okay.
I do wish Bale Street were a state road.
The old traffic over there, doesn't it?
Will that work?
We don't know the rules yet.
Yeah.
It'll most likely have to be spent on storm system and LNC, but we really don't know. We don't know pedestrian, you know, that was a topic that was brought up at the last meeting, and I said I would check to find out if they could be used on sidewalks and bike lanes. There's nothing to check yet, because we don't know the rules, that's going to be distributed. So at the point when those rules are made, we'll know if we could go ahead and put sidewalks in, or we could add bike lanes, if that's what this board determines the highest priority is. Really what I wanted this to be was maybe just kind of a free flow conversation of things, needs that we need to start thinking about. Old Crystal Road is one that we've heard a lot. The US 67 project out at Howard College, or Jackal Trail, that's one that the board has determined was pretty important, and that's one that can maybe be accelerated. It's funded out in fiscal year 18. That's a high priority, and we've made the decision to start getting the planning done on that, to try to get those plans ready sooner than 18, if additional money came available. This is additional money, and that may be something that this board would choose to do to accelerate that. The most critical is what would we do in 15. We'll have a little bit of time to think about the out years, but the FY 15 is going to be one that we're going to have a really short fuse on. So we need to start thinking about it.
As money becomes available, the need seems to be growing faster than the money, because another one's on the radar screen that's got to get there at some point in time, is 29th and North Drive. That section going east on up to Chadwick Street and that quarter out in there is getting.
North Run Ford Traffic to be put in there too.
Right, so I think the needs will grow to the available funding.
Absolutely. We know
Make it a wild prediction.
we know we've got this much bread, and we've got this much butter. How do we serve the public as responsibly as we can with that much butter? So that's.
For 16, 17, and 18, and moving on, I think we can plan ahead and we have some time. One of the things that I wanted to mention, that you mentioned, was the maintenance of the existing facilities that we can get done in 15, if that's time sensitive. Knickerbocker, for example, all the way to the airport. You mentioned Houston Hart and some others that we can either mill and overlay would be ideal if you can get this plan together quickly.
To be very honest, too, something like Knickerbocker might be absent of anything like Prop 1 passing and revenue made available by that. We might have to delay that not for Prop 1, and something like that might automatically step in, and we do have plans ready for that, because, you know,
That's
cabinet
currently
member.
funded, and, but it's in jeopardy because of some overruns we've had on funding categories that are funding that. And whenever you put a project out to bid, we have an estimate, and if it goes for higher than that, then that money has to come out someplace else. We look at other future projects, we have to pull money out to fund the existing that we're talking about. Knickerbocker's funded right now, but we're having overruns, pretty significant overruns on the funding category that that's funded with. So that might be something that we could save with this new allocation.
That
of
might be
money.
what's
And again, if you're looking for items that need to be ready, some of the maintenance items that we tag on 15, we're gonna do that.
No right of ways to buy, just,
No?
All right. Another topic that's been discussed, and that was mentioned a lot in the survey, was just safety. And the corridor that came up a lot was Sherwood Way. And just the number of crashes, we've had reports on the number of crashes, high crash location areas in San Angelo. Sherwood Way is pretty high on the list. And we can think about adding some safety improvements. There's some discussions about a development on the property that's opposite Lowe's and Walmart out there. We talked a little bit about that possibility in here. If that happens, that's probably gonna trigger some improvements on that corridor that we'll have to talk about. There's no money funding any improvements that would have to be funded out there on that corridor. That's something that's money could be directed to if the board thought that was a good use of the dollars.
we probably need this on the agenda next month too, after the November 2 election.
We can do that.
Chick-fil-A was created in
That's gonna be,
unilaterally, so.
Well, yeah, tonight, doesn't John think about that?
3 lanes now. You can't get, that's gonna be interesting. You can't get more out from work anymore. They serve breakfast. Yeah, that's gonna
It's
be.
a 24-hour deal,
Yeah.
except on Sunday.
Except on Sundays.
So again, homework for this board is to start thinking about and start talking to your constituents and the people that we serve on what the biggest needs are. And don't think in a small box, think in, what the needs are way greater than the funds, as the mayor said. So we're gonna have to make some tough
I
decisions.
actually welcome that discussion.
I do as well.
For the first time.
Good
It seems
discussion
like
to have.
We have a party to go to.
Absolutely.
So,
Is Bell Street ready to go? I mean, not funded, but do you have a plan for it? That's something that you might wanna look at. Just in case if the rules change, we can add other.
Because that's our number one priority in the city.
Well, and then, for that November 4 election and then our meeting, which would follow not too long after that, we can come up with lists, but we need what I guess we would refer to as the technical committee to help with estimates. So that once those rules are established, we can kind of pick and choose those that are gonna fit the funding a little more closely. So, I mean, I can give you a quick list, based on what our transportation committee and our board has already given pretty quickly, but I have no idea what different sections of Houston Heart, for example, and the different other projects, as well as the other bike lanes and other improvements that we've talked about, so those of you who can help with that, that'll be really important for me anyway, to help make that selection, that recommendation.
I think the list will be, you're absolutely right. A lot of effort going into building an estimate that's very legitimate. So, we can't do it for 10 or 15 projects, but once this board narrows it down to the ones that we think are the highest priority, and if it happened to be working on Houston Heart, if we know we got $3 million, you won't be able to pick the limits so much as where we're gonna start, we're gonna go $3 million that way. And we'll try and develop the plans to fit the funding that'll be available.
Okay.
But having that list will help us at least know where to start building our list.
Hope the voters approve it.
Yeah.
Anything else on this one? Any other further discussion? Number 10, organizational reports. Financial, monthly staff attendance reports.
Got our financial statements for the month of June. We're still working on getting July and August, as well as September reconciled. We're working with accounting. There were some issues that we had, but we think we've got most of those cleared up. And so when we get those done, we will include those at our December meeting. We'll have the annual performance and expenditure report, which basically details all the spending that we've done over last fiscal year. So you'll get to see those numbers again. Any questions on the financials, the activities, or the attendance?
Any questions from the board?
Can't find it, but I know that the financials, it only went through July, I guess.
Yeah, just the month. Well, this is June right here, the one that's in here.
You have the rest of them in December?
We'll have the rest of them next month, and then December we'll look at the entire year.
So we'll need to approve them then?
Well, in December you'll be approving the actual report. There'll be a separate report that's done that has to go to the state.
So today, this is just an FYI?
This is just an FYI.
Anyone have any questions on these? Have any further discussion on this?
And there again, though, I think it's a good addition to the monthly attendance report.
Yes, sir.
Nothing else to be done on this, let's move on to number 11, announcements, future agenda items. 2040 Metropolitan Transportation Plan Final, bylaw amendments, next meeting November 13 at 8:30.
Yes.
Is there anything to be said on those?
Under the Metropolitan Transportation Plan, you briefly mentioned a new, is it intra-city service starting soon?
Yes.
And
No.
Well,
Intercity.
so it's something right here locally?
No.
Between two cities.
Okay,
Inter.
Okay, so is it the one that we've read a little bit about in the paper going east from here? Is that?
It's Echo Transportation. They're gonna start the 1st of November. Their first routes will be from here to the travel center in Fort Worth. They'll be going through Brownwood and up that way. From the travel center, they can also book you on the light rail directly to Terminal 1 at DFW, or you can catch the shuttle service into Dallas from there. So they'll be running that twice a day. Down the road, they still have a lot of preparation to do, but their ambition is to go from here to Austin and back, and then from Austin to Houston.
Okay.
And that's the only plans they've given us privilege to so far. We have already sent out a letter to TxDOT and to FTA to rent them space for a ticket area up here. They've expressed some interest to expand further than that with us in the future.
Well, if you would, be sure and let them know that they need to get information to us so that we can tell all of our constituencies to try to help them be successful.
We can
Because
have.
we're already getting questions on it.
They're set up to go to the university at this job fair that's coming up. I've also made arrangements with the university to set them up for a room at the center, and so that they can hold a seminar for students and faculty and and whoever else is interested. They'll have a vehicle there at that time. We're trying to set them up with a meeting with the base.
Good.
So it's rather energetic right now.
Great. Thank you.
Would you like them here at your next board meeting?
I'd like
They would come in, they'd be glad to come in.
at least information so that we can have it and then possibly later set a forum for that.
They're just printing a new brochure,
Okay,
and as soon as they get that to me, I'll make sure and get it to all of you.
excellent.
Future agenda items, only thing I've got the bus stops down here. I think this is something we need to look into, whether John and Carl and Ray, maybe y'all could get something on this month and maybe have something for us to consider next agenda? Is
Yes,
that,
yes, sir.
if possible?
We'll start on it.
Anyone else have anything they want on a future agenda?
Can you just, make, just because they're talking about voting?
Voting center.
Since they're talking about voting,
That
Voting center
certainly
here.
needs to be on there.
mentioning that this is a voting location,
Yeah.
can you make the announcement?
Yeah, this, nothing for the next agenda, but just so that you'll all be aware, this will be a polling place for the elections. And it will be open, we'll have this hallway blocked off so that voters come in this door, come in, vote, and go back out that door. But it will be a polling place. So all of you can come here and vote.
Thank you. And please, share with your constituents, again, the paper ballot only going to be available during the early voting. And we're trying to conduct schools and education to get them familiar with electronic voting. Like you saw my judicial secretary in the paper the other day.
Yes.
It would clarify our election process so much if we could get away from paper ballot. And so, anyway, but we will not do that until the public feels comfortable with that. At this point in time, there's no appetite to do away with that. But early voting is a broad period of time. We're excited about these vote centers. I think it's been the best thing that's come along. We have struggled for 10 years with trying to deal with elections issues because HAVA had just taken place when I took office. So we have, the elections office has become quite a complicated, expensive operation to fund and without seemingly much more voter participation. So this is our last best chance that I know of to try to get it going. We're excited about it and I would love if y'all would consider being positive about it. To your circle of friends to say, okay, give this thing a chance to see how it works.
Will this be open for early voting or just
Thank you
on
for that
Tuesday?
public
No,
notice.
no, just on voting day.
Okay.
Anything further on this last agenda item? Then if not, then I will call us into the executive session